A Virginia residential purchase agreement is a legally binding contract between the buyer and the seller of a home. It outlines the terms and conditions agreed upon between the parties, such as the purchase price, financing terms, closing date, and any contingencies that must be satisfied before the deal is closed. In this video, we'll cover how a residential purchase agreement works, the legal requirements in Virginia, and what you need to create one. We're eForms, the biggest online database for legal documents. Be sure to watch all the way through to find a link to an official residential purchase agreement specific to Virginia that you can modify to fit your needs. First, let's review. How does a residential purchase agreement work? The residential purchase agreement initially acts as a written offer from a prospective buyer to the seller of a house. It states how much the buyer is willing to pay for it, how it will be financed, what contingencies must be met before closing the deal, and more. It's fine if there has to be some negotiation between the buyer and the seller before they agree on all parts of the contract. Once an agreement is met, both parties sign the document, making it legally binding. So, what are the legal requirements in Virginia? Virginia is a buyer beware state, meaning that there are no laws requiring sellers to disclose information regarding material defects on the property. This means that the buyer is fully responsible for conducting any inspections prior to making the purchase. However, under Virginia law, the seller is still required to provide a residential property disclosure statement that protects the seller from certain liabilities, a septic system disclosure informing the buyer of the condition of any septic system on the property, a disclosure about whether the property is located in a military air zone and is exposed to increased noise levels as a result, a methamphetamine disclosure if the property was ever previously used to produce meth, a building code or zoning ordinance violation disclosure if there are any pending code violations at the property. And lastly, a new dwelling disclosure if the builder of a new home is aware of material defects that will result in a building code violation. In addition, under federal law, the seller is required to disclose the property's history of lead-based paint exposure if the home was built before 1978. Now that we know more about how a residential purchase agreement works and what's legally required, here are some things that you should do to make sure the process goes smoothly. Include a mortgage pre-approval letter. A mortgage pre-approval letter is a document from a bank estimating how much it's willing to lend a buyer based on the buyer's credit history, income, debts, and assets. This helps the seller determine whether the buyer is financially credible. Offer an earnest money deposit. An earnest money deposit is a percentage of the offer and provided to the seller ahead of time as a show of good faith. It is written into the residential purchase agreement and typically delivered when the agreement is signed. Use an addendum to modify or add to the agreement. An addendum is often included with a residential purchase agreement to add to or amend any terms and conditions, while leaving the rest of the original agreement intact. It can also detail a contingency which allows either party to opt out of the contract if certain terms are not met. If you need an official Virginia residential purchase agreement, you can get started by clicking the link here. Also, hit that subscribe button for more videos that simplify the legal issues surrounding everything from selling property to making a will.